If you're really keeping track, free agency in the NBA begins Thursday, 6 Eastern time. Some news on Wednesday. DeJounte Murray, an all-star last season in San Antonio, averaged a career high of better than 21 for the Spurs on the move to Atlanta to get back significant Danilo Gallinari and 3 firsts. There are a bunch of teams that are lining up to see if Spurs are going to waive Gallinari because they'd be interested. Wizards and Nuggets have agreed to a trade, which lands the Wizards' Will Barton and Monte Morris in exchange for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Ish Smith. Is it me or is this that Spider-Man meme where they're both pointing at the other one like, hey, are we the same? Seems kind of like, what are we getting here? Stay in D.C. Bradley Beal declines his $36+ million option, which makes him a free agent. The 29-year-old, who has spent a decade with the Wizards, can sign a 5-year max and remain with Washington. The most he could get elsewhere is a 4-year max. James Harden did the same thing in Philadelphia, but he passes on more money, $47+ million. The expectations that he'll remain with the Sixers as they attempt to reshape their roster to try to make a championship run. And this is something that they have been discussing together since Philadelphia's season came to an end. Beal and Harden now officially unrestricted. Jalen Brunson, Zach LaVine, same deal. Patty Mills, Bobby Portis also declined player options to become unrestricted free agents. Among the restricted free agents are Suns center DeAndre Ayton, Hornets swingman Miles Bridges. Teams can match the offers that any of the restricted free agents sign if they wish to retain them. Bobby Marks already knows all this. He's kind enough to sit through the explanation to give us some context on what we've seen and what you think we'll see. The DeJounte Murray move on paper looks kind of interesting, right? But he's had the ball in his hands, and now you play with Trae Young, and you don't often have the ball in your hands. What do you see here kind of both ways as you look at it?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head. I mean, Trae Young ranked in the top 10 in usage rating. Murray ranked in the top 25. So who's going to be comfortable playing off the ball? And is that going to be Trae Young basically sacrificing here? So I think, Scott, when you look at a trade like this, if you're Atlanta with these draft picks, you only have one swing at the fence here. And when you move out 3 first-round picks, you better get it right here. And I think, for me, I'm curious because San Antonio has basically given up on its player who's 25 years old and is on a really good contract. So it's going to be interesting as far as how that fit works.
All right, the expectations for Harden and Beal as they decline. I mentioned what the expectations of Harden, I guess, is supposed to stay in Philly, and I think most feel like Beal would stay in D.C. Is that where we are?
Yeah, that's where we are. I mean, I think when we start with Bradley Beal, he opted out of that $36 million contract. He can actually start at $43 million. 5 years, $250 million would be his next contract. At the time, the largest in the NBA history. Right. And then I think when you look at James Harden, certainly going to sacrifice some money to go out and use your exceptions, your mid-level and your tax mid-level. The Harden contract will be interesting to see if it's going to be a 3-year or possibly a 4-year contract for James Harden.
But he'd get that money back on the back end, presumably.
He'll get it somewhere. Yeah. It might be in year 4, it might be in year 5, but he's not losing that $10 or $11 million that he's given up.
All right, give me a team and a situation as we look ahead to tomorrow and the decisions that get made that you find really interesting.
I think it's Phoenix. I mean, 64 wins last year, the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. It did not end well, and it starts with certainly DeAndre Ayton, who is a restricted free agent. Did not sign an extension or reached an impasse last year. What's going to happen? The market out there for Ayton is not there when you basically just look at Indiana as really the only team that can sign him outright with cap space. So is it back to Phoenix? And I think there is a big drop in the standings if Ayton does not return, or the package of players is a little bit underwhelming. This team could be competing for that 5 or 6 seed.
Phoenix, of course, was the one in the West. If you look at a team in the East that has something about it that you find interesting, who would that team be?
It's Brooklyn, and it's not really because of Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant, because we've talked about they've got 7 or 8 roster spots are open. At one time, the Nets and the Lakers were the darlings of all these players going to ring chase, guys who were going to give back money to sign these contracts, these 1-year vet minimum, Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge. Is that going to be the same case for players going into free agency? Do they look at Brooklyn as that destination with the uncertainty of Kyrie Irving? I'm interested as far as seeing who the Nets can go out and get in free agency.
Bobby, appreciate the time. I know it's a busy time for you. We'll be paying attention, obviously, in the next coming days and weeks as we get a little bit of clarity of what happens. Appreciate you. Be well.
Thanks, Scott.
Why does he want out? What more can you tell us?
Well, by declining that option now, he is eligible if he wants to re-sign in Washington for 5 years, $251 million, a 4-year deal at around $186 million elsewhere. Listen, Bradley Beal has talked very consistently about his love of that city, that organization. I think there's a level of confidence there, that they're going to be able to re-sign him. But he is a free agent now. As his agent, Mark Bartelstein, told me, they just informed the team that he was declining that option. And so, I think Bradley Beal, you saw the trade they made earlier in the day today, bringing in Monty Mack and Monty Morris,
yes.
Right, and
Will Barton.
And Will Barton, of course. I'll remember the names.
You broke the story. You've got a lot going
names,
on.
Yeah.
But those are certainly some veterans that are really going to help that team.
Okay.
The news today, he will be opting out of that contract to become a free agent. What does that mean for him and the Sixers?
It means that he can now negotiate a new deal with the Sixers. And by opting out and doing a new deal, he gives the Sixers a real opportunity to improve their roster. It allows them to use the $10.5 million mid-level exception, the $4 million biannual exception, and they can also get involved in some sign and trades. And I know in his conversations with the team, that was really important. How can we get this team better? How can we improve our supporting cast? And listen, I think in James Harden, too, he can do a deal now going forward, certainly make back that $47 million and more, and they'll have an opportunity starting Thursday at 6 p.m. to negotiate a new deal. James Harden's going to be back in Philadelphia. It's just a question of what the contract looks like, and it may also now give them an opportunity to go out and do something they really want to do with this roster, and I think they saw it in the playoffs, make it tougher, make it more physical, mentally tougher, physically tougher, and they'll get that.
We officially welcome in our Adrian Wojnarowski. Just from the Hawks' perspective, what went into deciding to bring him in and pair him with Trae Young?
Yeah, this has been a Hawks organization, I think as much as any in the league, that was just determined that they were going to make changes, they were going to get better. They gave up a lot. 3 first-round picks, 2 of their own, 1 they have via Charlotte, and also a pick swap in 2026 with San Antonio. But Trae Young was really excited about getting DeJounte Murray in, and this is a group that, listen, they want to be improved. He'll improve them certainly on both sides of the ball. But Atlanta, listen, they're not done dealing yet. They still have been engaged on John Collins, and I think fundamentally there's going to be some real there are going to be some more changes in Atlanta, but they're pretty excited about the idea of DeJounte Murray joining Trae Young.
So on the other side, the Spurs lose a guy who averaged 21 and 9. You mentioned the picks. A couple of them are unconditional here in the first round. What's San Antonio trying to do?
Yeah, 11 picks now in the next 7 years. And they got 3 from Atlanta, 1 from Chicago, and 7 of their own. And they're in a full rebuild now in San Antonio, and they had 3 first-round picks this year. They've gone very young. They've got cap space. And listen, I think it was inevitable in San Antonio, and I think DeJounte Murray, I think being part of a rebuild like that after coming off his first All-Star appearance, I think he's excited about a chance to go. But 3 first-round picks, that's a lot in any trade in the NBA, especially getting them unprotected. And this is certainly an organization with a history of drafting well. And listen, they are now in a full rebuild mode. And, Greg Popovich, the expectation